The thunder rolled across the vast Wyoming sky as Olivia Kincaid stared at the letter in her trembling hands, her eyes scanning the handwritten words that would forever change her life. It was 1876, and the pristine wilderness of the West had been her sanctuary after fleeing Philadelphia's suffocating high society, but now even this haven was threatened. "Miss Kincaid," Sheriff Tanner called from the doorway of the small trading post. "Storm's coming in fierce. You'd best delay your journey back to Larkspur Creek until tomorrow." Olivia folded the letter and tucked it into the pocket of her riding skirt. Her father's lawyers had found her at last, demanding her return east to fulfill the marriage contract she'd escaped 6 months prior. The thought of returning to that life made her stomach twist with dread. "I appreciate your concern, Sheriff, but I must return today. My students are expecting me tomorrow morning." At 23, Olivia had found purpose as the schoolteacher in the small settlement 30 miles north. The sheriff frowned beneath his gray mustache. "That canyon trail's treacherous in good weather, miss. With this rain." "I know the trail well," she assured him, though her confidence wavered as another clap of thunder shook the wooden beams overhead. As Olivia gathered her supplies, the trading post door swung open, bringing with it a gust of wind and the imposing figure of a man she'd seen occasionally but never spoken to. Owen Keller stood 6 feet tall, his broad shoulders filling the doorframe, dark hair pushed back beneath a worn Stetson. At 28, he'd earned a reputation as one of the territory's most skilled ranchers, though rumors of a troubled past from Texas followed him like shadows. "Afternoon, Sheriff," Owen nodded, his voice deep and controlled. His eyes, keen as a hawk's, settled briefly on Olivia before he approached the counter. "Keller," the sheriff acknowledged. "Try talking some sense into Miss Kincaid here. She's fixing to ride back to Larkspur with that storm bearing down." Owen turned, studying her with an intensity that made Olivia straighten her spine. "That'd be unwise, madam." "I appreciate everyone's concern," she replied firmly, "but I've made my decision." Owen shrugged and turned his attention to the shopkeeper. "Need supplies for the south pasture fence line. We've got cattle straying toward Diamondback Canyon." The name sent a chill through Olivia. Diamondback Canyon was her route home, a narrow passage that cut through the mountains, saving nearly 10 miles compared to the main road. 20 minutes later, Olivia secured the last of her packages to her mare, Penny. The rain had started, not the downpour predicted, but a steady drizzle that dampened her resolve without breaking it. She mounted with practiced ease and nudged her horse toward the trail. She was barely half a mile out of town when the sound of hoofbeats approached from behind. Owen Keller drew alongside her, his expression unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. "This isn't a good idea, Miss Kincaid," he said without preamble. "Mr. Keller, while I appreciate your concern—" "It's not concern," he interrupted. "It's common sense. That canyon fills fast when the higher elevations get rain. There's been heavy precipitation north of here for days." "I'm aware of the risks," she replied stiffly. "Are you?" His eyes locked with hers. "Because I pulled 2 bodies from that canyon last spring when they tried the same thing." The bluntness of his words gave her pause, but the letter in her pocket felt heavy as lead. If she didn't return to Larkspur tonight, she wouldn't have time to pack her things and leave before her father's men arrived. "I have urgent business," she said finally. Owen studied her face, then glanced at the darkening sky. "Then I'll ride with you." "That isn't necessary." "Didn't say it was necessary. Said I'll do it." He adjusted his hat against the increasing rainfall. "I was heading that direction anyway." Olivia wanted to refuse, but practicality won out. Having a companion familiar with the territory was sensible, especially as the weather deteriorated. "Very well." They rode in silence for the first hour, the trail winding through pine forests before beginning its descent toward the canyon. The rain fell harder now, drumming against Olivia's oilskin coat. She watched Owen from the corner of her eye, noting how he frequently scanned the sky and surrounding landscape. "You're running from something," he said suddenly, his voice carrying over the rain. Olivia stiffened. "I don't know what you mean. Nobody rides into this weather without good reason. And the way you keep looking over your shoulder." He shrugged. "Reminds me of someone with ghosts on their trail." She considered denying it, but found herself strangely compelled to speak truth to this taciturn man. "Not ghosts. Lawyers." A hint of surprise crossed his features. "You're in trouble with the law?" "No. She smiled ruefully. Family law, perhaps. My father arranged a marriage before I left Philadelphia. I refused, so I came west. And now, they've found me. She hadn't meant to reveal so much, but something about the isolation of their journey loosened her tongue. If I don't return to my cabin tonight, I won't have time to leave before they arrive in Larkspur tomorrow. Owen nodded slowly, as if pieces of a puzzle had fallen into place. So you'd risk the canyon rather than face them. Some cages are made of gold, Mr. Keller, but they're cages nonetheless. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Call me Owen, he said after a moment. If we're going to risk our necks together, might as well use first names. The trail narrowed as they approached the canyon entrance. Diamondback earned its name from both its winding shape and the rattlesnakes that sunned themselves on its rocks in warmer months. Today, however, the danger came from above. The rain had become a deluge, water streaming down the rock walls that rose on either side. I don't like this, Owen called over the roar of the storm. The water's rising faster than I expected. Olivia surveyed the path ahead. The normally dry canyon floor now held several inches of swiftly moving water, but the trail remained passable. We're already committed, she shouted back. It's just as far to return as to continue. Owen's expression darkened, but he nodded. Stay close. They pressed forward, the canyon walls rising ever higher around them. Their horses moved cautiously, sensing the danger in the rising water that now reached their fetlocks. Olivia's heart pounded as they navigated a particularly narrow bend, her mare balking at the rushing current. Easy, Penny, she soothed, stroking the horse's wet neck. We're almost. Her words were cut short by a sound that chilled her more than the rain, a distant roaring that grew louder with each passing second. Owen's head snapped up, his face tense. Flash flood. Turn around now. They wheeled their horses, but it was too late. Around the bend behind them came a wall of churning water, carrying branches and debris as it thundered toward them. There. Owen pointed to a narrow ledge about 12 feet up the canyon wall. Climb. Olivia didn't hesitate. She dismounted and slapped Penny's flank, sending the frightened animal bolting ahead where the canyon widened. Owen did the same with his gelding, both of them praying the horse's instincts would lead them to safety. The water was ankle-deep now as they scrambled toward the rock face. Owen reached it first, finding handholds in the rough stone. Here. He reached down, grasping Olivia's wrist and pulling her up beside him just as the first surge hit. Water crashed against the canyon wall below them, instantly rising several feet. Olivia clung to the rock face, her fingers numb with cold and fear as they climbed higher, seeking the ledge that might be their only salvation. Owen reached it first, hauling himself onto the narrow shelf before extending his hand to her. Grab hold. Their fingers touched, slipped in the rain, then locked. With a strength born of desperation, he pulled her up beside him as the flood waters continued to rise, carrying trees and boulders in its furious path. Thank you, she gasped, pressing herself against the canyon wall, the ledge barely wide enough for them to sit side by side. Owen said nothing, his eyes fixed on the raging water below that had, in moments, filled the canyon to a depth of 15 feet and was still rising. The rain continued to pour, running in rivulets down the rock face and soaking them despite the slight overhang that offered minimal shelter. The horses, Olivia began, her voice breaking. They're smart animals, Owen said, though his tone held little conviction. They might make it to higher ground if they keep moving. They sat in silence as darkness fell, the flood waters creeping ever upward. By nightfall, the water had risen to just 4 feet below their ledge and showed no signs of receding. The temperature dropped with the sun, and Olivia began to shiver uncontrollably. Here, Owen removed his duster coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, leaving himself in just a wool shirt that clung to his muscular frame. You'll freeze, she protested weakly. I've weathered worse, he replied, though his jaw tightened against the cold. Tell me about Philadelphia. What's it like to live in a city with proper streets and buildings taller than 2 stories? She recognized his attempt to distract her from their dire situation. Stifling, she answered honestly. Every movement watched, every word measured. My father built a shipping empire, but the cost was my mother's happiness and eventually her life. I'm sorry. Don't be. Her passing showed me what happens when you live by others' expectations rather than your own heart. She pulled his coat tighter. The man my father chose for me, Harrison Blackwell, he's cut from the same cloth. Wealthy, respected, and utterly concerned with appearances and social position. And that's not what you want. Olivia laughed softly. What I want is to teach children to read, to watch their eyes light up when they understand something new. I want to breathe air that isn't choked with coal smoke, to make my own decisions. She glanced at him. What about you? What brought you to Wyoming? Owen's expression closed like a door. Needed a fresh start. From what? The water rose another inch, and Owen shifted uncomfortably on the narrow ledge. The war left scars on many of us. I was 16 when I joined up with the Confederacy, too young to understand what I was fighting for. By 18, I'd seen enough death to last several lifetimes. And after was worse in some ways. Texas wasn't kind to returning soldiers with no prospects. His voice grew distant. I did things I'm not proud of. Rode with men I should have avoided. Outlaws? She ventured. He nodded once. Until a job went wrong. A man died, a good man protecting his family. I couldn't do it anymore after that. Been trying to outrun that part of myself ever since. The honesty of his confession touched her. Here in the darkness, with death possibly hours away, pretenses seemed pointless. We all have regrets, she said softly. Things we wish we could change. Some regrets weigh heavier than others. The water had risen to less than 3 feet below their ledge. If it continued at this rate, they'd be forced higher before morning if there was anywhere higher to go. We should try to conserve heat, Owen said practically. Turn toward me. Olivia complied, and he pulled her against his chest, wrapping his arms around her. The intimacy of the position would have scandalized her Philadelphia acquaintances, but here it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Thank you, she murmured against his shirt. Not just for the warmth, but for coming with me. I'd likely be dead already if you hadn't. We're not out of danger yet, he reminded her, though his voice had softened. I know. She closed her eyes, listening to his heartbeat beneath her ear. But I'm glad I'm not alone. Hours passed in cold misery as the rain continued unabated. Occasionally, they spoke, sharing stories, learning each other's histories in fragments and pieces. In the strange intimacy of their shared peril, Olivia found herself revealing things she'd never told another soul, her dreams, her fears, the crushing weight of her father's expectations. In turn, Owen spoke of his ranch, the hard-won peace he'd found in Wyoming, and his hope to eventually build something lasting. Neither mentioned the possibility that all their plans might end in this canyon. Near midnight, the water reached the edge of their ledge, lapping at their boots. We need to move higher, Owen said grimly, scanning the rock face above them. In the dim moonlight that occasionally broke through the clouds, he could make out another possible handhold about 10 feet up. I'll climb first, then help you up. There's no room for both of us there, Olivia said, seeing where he was looking. The next ledge was barely wide enough for one person. Owen met her eyes steadily. I'll hold onto the rock face. You can take the ledge. And exhaust yourself? That's not sustainable. Neither is drowning. The water was now flowing over the ledge, soaking their legs. We don't have a choice. Before she could argue further, he began climbing, finding precarious holds in the slippery rock. When he reached the higher ledge, he braced himself and extended his arm down toward her. Come on. Olivia took a deep breath and followed his path, her numb fingers struggling to find purchase. She was halfway up when her foot slipped, leaving her dangling by one hand. Owen, she cried out, panic surging through her veins. I've got you. His hand clamped around her wrist. Find your footing. With his guidance, she managed to secure her position and continue climbing until she reached the tiny ledge. It was indeed smaller than the first, barely wide enough for her to perch upon. You can't stay like that, she said, watching how he clung to the rock face beside the ledge, muscles straining. You'll fall. Got a better idea? Water continued to rise below them, already claiming their former position. Olivia assessed their situation. Yes, sit on the ledge. And where will you trust me? Reluctantly, Owen maneuvered onto the small ledge. Once he was seated, Olivia carefully positioned herself on his lap, her back against his chest. Now we can both rest without you exhausting yourself. Owen's arms encircled her waist, steadying her. Clever, he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. They remained that way as the night crawled by, speaking occasionally but mostly silent, conserving energy. The rain finally began to ease around 3 in the morning, though the water level continued to rise, albeit more slowly. "Tell me something good," Olivia said softly, fighting against exhaustion. "Something to look forward to if we survive this." Owen was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. "Spring on the ranch," he finally said. "When the meadows fill with wildflowers and the foals take their first steps. The air smells like grass and possibility." She smiled, trying to picture it. "That sounds beautiful." "It is." His arms tightened slightly around her. "What about you? What's your something good?" "Christmas at my school," she replied without hesitation. "The children perform a pageant for their parents. Last year, Tommy Jenkins, who can barely sit still for 5 minutes any other time, memorized an entire poem about winter stars. The pride on his face when everyone applauded." She sighed. "That's worth everything." Another hour passed. The water had risen to just 2 feet below their new perch when Owen tensed behind her. "What is it?" she asked. "Listen." At first, Olivia heard nothing beyond the rushing water. Then she caught a change in the sound, a subtle shifting. "It's receding?" "I think so." Owen's voice held cautious relief. "The rain stopped up north. If we're lucky, the water will drop before dawn." They watched in silent hope as the water level indeed began to fall, inch by precious inch. By the first light of dawn, it had dropped nearly 4 feet, revealing their original ledge once more. "We should wait longer," Owen advised when Olivia suggested moving down. "Flash floods are unpredictable. Could be a temporary drop." But as the eastern sky brightened from black to deep purple, then to pink and gold, the water continued to recede, eventually revealing sections of the canyon floor. "I can't feel my legs," Olivia admitted when they finally decided to climb down. Hours in the same position had left her muscles cramped and useless. Owen considered their options. "Put your arms around my neck." "What?" "I'll carry you down. It's safer than risking a fall if your legs give out." Too exhausted to argue, Olivia complied. With surprising gentleness, Owen lifted her onto his back, her arms encircling his neck while he carefully navigated down to their original ledge. The descent to the canyon floor was more challenging, but he managed it with methodical precision, testing each handhold before committing his weight. When they finally reached the muddy ground, the water had receded to a stream running down the center of the canyon. Owen didn't set Olivia down. "Your legs need time," he explained. "And this mud will suck the boots right off your feet. I'll carry you until we find solid ground." "That could be miles," she protested weakly. "Then I'll carry you for miles." The determination in his voice brooked no argument. With Olivia on his shoulders, Owen began walking, following the canyon as it gradually widened. The rising sun revealed the devastation left by the flood-uprooted trees, scattered boulders, and debris hanging from rock outcroppings 15 feet above their heads. "We wouldn't have survived if we'd stayed on horseback," Olivia murmured, surveying the destruction. "No," Owen agreed grimly. "We wouldn't have." After an hour of slow progress, Olivia insisted on trying to walk. Her first steps were wobbly but grew steadier as circulation returned to her limbs. They continued side by side, emerging finally from the canyon into a broad valley bathed in morning sunlight. "I know where we are," Owen said, orienting himself. "Larkspur Creek is about 5 miles northeast. My ranch is closer 3 miles west." Olivia nodded, suddenly remembering the reason for her desperate journey. "What time do you think it is?" "Early yet. Maybe 7. She calculated quickly. The morning stage from Cheyenne would arrive in Larkspur around noon. "If my father's men are on it." "Then you still have time," Owen finished. "But not if we stand here talking about it." They set off across the valley, their pace hampered by exhaustion and the lingering effects of their night in the cold. When Olivia stumbled for the 3rd time, Owen wordlessly lifted her onto his shoulders again. "This is ridiculous," she protested. "You're as tired as I am." "Probably," he conceded, "but I've got a few inches and about 50 pounds on you. It's more efficient this way." She couldn't argue with his logic, though she marveled at his endurance after the ordeal they'd shared. They traveled in companionable silence, both lost in their thoughts. "What will you do?" Owen asked eventually. "When you reach your cabin?" Pack what I can carry and leave before they arrive. She sighed, feeling the weight of uncertainty. Head further west, perhaps. Oregon or Washington Territory. Starting over again. I'm becoming quite practiced at it. She tried to keep her tone light, but weariness seeped through. Owen was quiet for several minutes before speaking again. There's another option. Oh, my ranch. I could use a schoolteacher. He cleared his throat. For the children of my ranch hands, I mean. And others nearby. They have to ride 10 miles to the school in Fossil Creek now. Olivia was stunned by the offer. You do that? For someone you barely know? Owen stopped walking and carefully set her down, turning to face her. In the clear light of morning, she could fully see his face for the first time since their ordeal began. The strong jawline shadowed with stubble, the lines at the corners of his eyes, and something vulnerable in his gaze that hadn't been there before. I know you risked everything for freedom, he said quietly. I know you care more about teaching children than social standing. I know you remained calm in the face of death, and you think of others before yourself. His eyes held hers. I'd say I know the important things. Olivia's heart beat faster. And what would people think? A single woman living on your property. You could stay in the old foreman's cabin. It's small but sound. As for what people think, he shrugged. People will talk regardless. Question is whether their talk matters more than your freedom. The offer tempted her more than she wanted to admit. Not just the practical solution it presented, but the chance to remain near this man who'd shown her such quiet strength. I'll consider it, she said finally. But first, I need to reach my cabin. They continued their journey, Owen carrying her when the terrain grew difficult, walking beside her when possible. By mid-morning, they crested a hill and saw Larkspur Creek in the distance, the small collection of buildings nestled along the banks of the stream that gave the settlement its name. My cabin is on the northern edge, Olivia said, pointing. If we hurry, I can gather my things and be gone before the stage arrives. They quickened their pace, but both were reaching the limits of their endurance after the night's ordeal. As they approached the outskirts of town, they heard the distant sound of hoofbeats. Riders, Owen said, shading his eyes. Coming from town. Olivia's heart sank as she made out 3 men on horseback heading directly toward them. No, she whispered. They're early. As the riders drew closer, the lead man called out. Miss Kincaid. Thank goodness. It was Sheriff Tanner, accompanied by 2 of the local ranchers. We've been searching since dawn. Word came that Diamondback Canyon flooded something fierce. Relief and disappointment warred within her. We were caught in it, she explained. Mr. Keller found us shelter on a ledge until the waters receded. The sheriff's gaze shifted to Owen, taking in their bedraggled appearance and obvious exhaustion. That's so? Well, you're a lucky woman, Miss Kincaid. Most who get caught in those flash floods don't live to tell about it. I'm aware, she said, glancing at Owen with a warmth she couldn't hide. Mr. Keller saved my life. Well now, the sheriff said, a knowing look crossing his weathered features. That's something indeed. He cleared his throat. There's something else you should know, miss. 2 gentlemen arrived on yesterday's evening stage from Cheyenne. Been asking all over town for you. Olivia's breath caught. Yesterday's stage? But that's not possible. It doesn't arrive until noon. Schedule changed last month, the sheriff explained. Comes in at 4 now, on account of the new mail contract. Her mind raced. If her father's men had arrived yesterday, they might already be at her cabin. Her chance to escape unnoticed was gone. They're staying at the Larkspur Hotel, the sheriff continued. Fancy-dressed fellows. Said they represent your father's interests. Owen stepped forward. Sheriff, Miss Kincaid and I have had a trying night. Perhaps you could escort her to my ranch instead of town? She's in need of rest before facing any business matters. The sheriff raised an eyebrow. That right, miss? You want to go to Keller's place? Olivia looked at Owen, seeing the offer in his eyes, not just shelter for a day, but something more. A choice. A future, perhaps. In that moment, with the sun warming her face and her heart full of newfound courage, the decision seemed clear. Yes, she said firmly. Yes, I would. 3 days later, Olivia stood on the porch of the old foreman's cabin, watching the sun set over Owen's ranch. She'd spent the first day sleeping, recovering from the ordeal in the canyon. The second day, Owen had ridden into Larkspur to collect her belongings from her cabin, returning with news that her father's representatives had left on the morning stage, presumably to report her whereabouts. "They'll be back," he'd warned. "With more legal papers, most likely." "Let them come," she'd replied with newfound resolution. "I'm of age. They can't force me to return." Now, on the third evening, Owen approached from the main house, carrying a tray with 2 steaming cups. "Coffee," he said, handing her one. "Though I can't promise it's as good as what you're used to in Philadelphia. I prefer it this way," she said honestly, strong enough to defend itself. He smiled, a rare, transformative expression that she was seeing more frequently. They stood side by side, watching as the sky blazed orange and gold before deepening to purple. "I spoke with some of the ranch hands today," Owen said. 5 of them have children old enough for schooling. The Prestons over the ridge have 3 more, and the Hawthorns to the south have twins. 10 students already, Olivia mused. A fine start. The old bunkhouse could be converted easily enough. It has good light and a proper stove for winter. She turned to study his profile. "You've given this considerable thought." "I've given a lot of things considerable thought these past few days." He set his cup down and faced her. "Nearly dying has a way of clarifying what matters." "And what matters to you?" "Owen Keller," she asked softly. "Building something worthwhile. Making amends for past mistakes." His eyes held hers. "And maybe, if I'm fortunate, not facing the future alone." Olivia's heart quickened. "Are you offering me more than just a teaching position?" "I'm offering you a choice." He took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "We barely know each other a few days. A night clinging to life on a canyon wall. By all sensible measures, it's not enough time to make life-changing decisions. And yet," she prompted, her voice barely above a whisper, "and yet I can't shake the feeling that we were meant to be caught in that canyon together. That some things don't require years to know with certainty." He drew a deep breath. "I'm not asking for promises now. Just possibility. Time to see if what began in that canyon might grow into something enduring." Olivia thought of the letter from her father, the life mapped out for her without her consent. She thought of her brief taste of independence in Larkspur Creek, and then of the nights spent in Owen's arms, finding warmth and safety in the midst of danger. "I believe," she said carefully, "that life offers few perfect certainties. We make choices with the information we have, hoping we've chosen wisely." She squeezed his hand. "What I know is this. You carried me when I couldn't walk. You offered me shelter when I had nowhere to go. And something awakened between us when we faced death together." "Is that enough?" he asked. Olivia stepped closer, resting her free hand against his chest to feel the steady beat of his heart. "It's a beginning. A chance worth taking." When he kissed her, it felt like coming home to a place she'd never been before, unfamiliar, yet perfectly right. Behind them, the last light of day faded into twilight, and stars began to appear one by one above the Wyoming plains. 6 months later, the converted bunkhouse echoed with children's voices as Olivia concluded the day's lessons. 15 students now attended her school, the original 10 joined by children from more distant ranches who boarded during the week. Owen waited outside as the children filed out, nodding to each one as they passed. When the last had gone, he entered the schoolhouse, removing his hat as he approached her desk. "Productive day?" he asked, watching as she organized papers. "Very." Tommy Preston finally mastered his multiplication tables, and little Grace Hawthorne read an entire passage without hesitation. She looked up at him with a smile that still made his heart skip. "And how was your day, husband?" The words still felt new and wonderful, though they'd been married for 3 months now. After returning from a trip to Cheyenne with a special license, they'd exchanged vows in a simple ceremony attended by their neighbors and friends. Olivia had written to her father afterward, not seeking permission or forgiveness, but simply informing him of her new life and name. "Busy," Owen replied, leaning down to kiss her briefly. "Finished mending the north fence line, and the new foal is doing well." He paused. "And a letter came for you." He held out an envelope bearing the elaborate letterhead of Kincaid Shipping. Olivia took it with steady hands, no longer fearing her father's attempts to control her future. She opened it and read quickly, her expression shifting from concentration to surprise. "What is it?" Owen asked. "My father," she began, then shook her head in wonder. "He's coming to visit. Next month, if the weather permits travel." Owen's eyebrows rose. Is that good news or bad? I'm not entirely sure. She read further. He says he wants to see the life I've chosen for myself, and to meet the man who, she smiled at the phrasing, had the audacity to marry a Kincaid without proper introduction. Should I be concerned? Olivia set the letter down and rose from her desk, moving to wrap her arms around his waist. No. He'll bluster and question and try to intimidate you, but that's just his way. The important thing is that he's making an effort. Owen nodded thoughtfully. Then we'll welcome him properly. Show him that while your life here may not have the luxuries of Philadelphia, it has other compensations. Such as, she teased, a school full of eager students. He kissed her forehead. Neighbors who respect you for your mind rather than your family name. Another kiss, this one against her temple. And a husband who has loved you since the moment you stubbornly insisted on riding into a storm. Olivia laughed, the sound filling the schoolhouse with warmth. I wasn't stubborn, I was determined. As you say, Mrs. Keller. His tone was indulgent. Though I noticed the distinction escapes me. Outside, the spring sun bathed the valley in golden light, wildflowers dotting the meadows just as Owen had described during that desperate night in the canyon. From this schoolhouse window, Olivia could see the ranch house they now shared, the barn where new life arrived each spring, and the distant peaks that had nearly claimed their lives. I have something to tell you, too, she said, meeting his gaze with shining eyes. Something my father will discover when he visits. Owen waited, a question in his expression. We'll need to prepare the small room adjacent to ours, she said, placing his hand against her still flat stomach. By winter, it will have an occupant. The joy that spread across Owen's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Without words, he lifted her into his arms and spun her in a circle, his laughter joining hers in the afternoon quiet. Later, as they walked hand in hand toward home, Olivia thought about the flood that had nearly taken their lives but had instead given them to each other. Like the canyon, transformed by those raging waters, they too had emerged changed stronger, more certain of what mattered, ready to build something lasting on the foundation of that single, harrowing night. Above them, the vast Wyoming sky stretched endlessly blue, promising storms and sunshine in equal measure, just like the life they would share in this wild, beautiful land they both now called home.